So let's do the next part of the if statements, which is going to interest 1. So I'm clicking on the interest 1 tab down here. And what I want to do in cell B7 is I want to provide interest on a deposit of $8,000. And the rules are that if you have 10,000 or less, meaning up to 10,000, and equivalent to 10,000, we're going to give you 2% interest. And anything over 10,000 will get you 2.5%. So let's do an if statement for that. Equals if I'm going to check out if this number here is less than or equal to. And look at the way that's depicted. You do the less than sign first, then the equals. What are we comparing it to? 10,000. All right. And then if that is true, we're going to use the 2%. So I'm going to click on the 2%, but I'm not finished yet. I have to multiply that by the deposit amount. So I'm going to multiply by A7. If it is false, meaning it is more than 10,000, I then click on the 2.5%, and I multiply that by the amount that we're comparing to. Okay, that one there. And then I close brackets. And that should come back with $160, right? So 2% of 8,000. But if I drag this down, it's not going to work, because if I look at the shadowing, all right, it will drag the shadowing out of sync badly. So I have to nail down stuff. So anything that's red, purple, or green up here has to be nailed down. So that one has to be nailed with F4. The C3 has to be nailed down with F4, and the green has to be nailed down with F4. Now it's draggable. Press enter and pull it down. Okay, and you'll notice this one here. We just check it out. We'll go with F2. Is A11 less than B3? Meaning, is 20,000 less than B3? Yeah, no, it isn't. It's a false statement. So therefore, we go to the third section of the if statement, the last part, the false part. If it's false, then we're going to use the 2.5% multiplied by the deposit amount. Press enter. All right, let's go on to interest 2. Now in this particular example, we have not 2 rates anymore. We've got 3 rates. And so what do we do about that? Well, basically what we do is we have 2 if statements. Okay, so we do an if statement for a comparator between this, and then we do another if statement for a comparator for this. So let me show you how that might work. If I go equals if, I then want to compare this number here, the A10, to see if it's less than or equal to 10,000. Now we just did that in the interest 1 tab. So that's pretty simple. We know how that works. If it is true that it is less than 10,000, which in this case it is, then I'm going to give them 2% multiplied by the amount on deposit, comma. All right, so far so good. If it is false, we still don't know which one we're going to use here. We don't know if it's 2.5 or 2.25. So what we do here is we set up another if statement. And you do not do an equal sign at this point. We just do another if. We do open bracket. And then we say, okay, I now want to compare this with the 100,000 to see if that is going to be 2.5%. And if it's false, then we know it's going to be 2.25. All right, so I'm going to compare this number here. I go back here. I have to compare my A10, and I'm going to say if that is greater than 100,000, then I'm going to use the 2.5% rate times my deposit amount. If it is false, then it must be the 2.25. It must be between the 10 and the 100. So I'm clicking on the 2.25. I multiply that by the deposit amount, and then I close brackets, and then I have to close brackets again. Notice the brackets have our math skills kick in. There's a bracket here and a bracket here. So I only have one bracket so far at the end. I have to have a second bracket to balance it. Okay, and so we have what calls a nested if. We have the main if statement here, And then we have, if it's false, then we have to do another if statement to determine which of the remaining two are valid. I have a whole bunch of stuff up here that I have to nail down. Anything in this area that I'm circling right now with my mouse has to be nailed down. So I'm going to nail down my B3, my C3, my B5, my C5, and my C4. Alright, so anything that's A10 stays as it is. I press enter, comes back with $160, and then I pull this down now, and it should be okay. Alright, so that's what we call a nested if statement, and it's quite complex to get your head around this. What I just want to repeat again is that the very first part of the if statement is the part where you're checking out the A10 compared to the 10,000, and then it comes back as 2% if it's true. The challenge then is to figure out what happens if it's false. So in order to do that, we're going to click in another if statement to determine which of the two remaining ones we're going to use. We've already determined the two for the true statement, but what do we do for the remainders? So we kick in another if statement. We check out A10 compared to the 100,000. If it is greater, then we're using 2.5, so that's a true statement right here. If it's false, then it must be the last one that's available, which is 2.25 times A10, and we're done. Okay, let's go to the last one. Now here we have a last one, another one where we have actually 4 different choices. So this is another nested if statement. So if I go like this, here we go, equals if. So what I want to do is I want to check this number out, the A12, and see if it is less than $10,000. Okay, if that is true, then we want to use 2% multiplied by the deposit amount. If it is false, then we're going to kick in another if statement because we don't know which one to choose of the remainders. So if that's the case, I'm now going to check out A12 again. I'm going to do another if statement, sorry. If, open bracket, check out A12 to see if it's less than 100,000. Okay? Now, it will never check out anything less than 10,000 because we've already checked that out in the previous part of the if statement down here where I'm pointing. So now we're checking out if it's less than $100,000. If that is a true statement, then we're going to use 2.5% multiplied by the deposit amount. If it is a false statement, then we still don't know what's left over to choose from the leftovers. So we choose another if statement, if, and this time we're going to check out the A12, and we're going to see up to $1 million, so up to B7. If that is a true statement, we're going to use 3% multiplied by the deposit amount. If it is a false statement, right, it must be the remainder, okay, which is this number, times the deposit amount, and then we close the brackets. And the key thing to remember is how many brackets do we close by. We have one open here, one open here, one open here, therefore we have to have 3 closed. 1, 2, 3. Press enter. Comes back with the usual $160 we had in the previous examples, but we have to nail down all the stuff, all the cells that are colorized, row 9 and above. So I'm going to click on B3, dollar, C3 dollar signs, B5 dollar signs, C5 dollar signs, B7 dollar signs, C7 dollar signs, C9 dollar signs. Alright, so we should have only the A's should be undollarized. Let me just make sure about that. Yep, so it looks alright. Press enter. And now when I pull this down, it will apply the correct rates. Okay? So that's called nesting if statements. There it is there. Alright? So always remember that once you get to the false section of a statement in which there's many choices after the first one, then you have to kick in another if statement and the cascading if statements until you're finished. Alright, that's the end. So that's the end of this video. We're moving on now to actually doing it for the chapter content. So this stuff here, we're going to do some if statements along here, and we're going to aim for getting something that looks like this. Alright, so that's what we got to build, and we're going to use this stuff up here to help build the if statements down here. Okay, so we'll come back to that, and we'll start off with this starting file. Coming back to you later.